Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's baseball betting podcast, presented by BetMGM. Brendan Glasheen, Sean Zerillo, Anthony DeBundo here to break down the AL Central. You can find the rest of our division betting previews wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you can find Payoff Pitch. Please rate, review, and subscribe. As I mentioned in previous episodes, you can find the off-season betting update episode, our first one of the 2023 season with Zerillo and Whitchurch. And again, I tell you folks that during the season, we'll have Payoff Pitch, and you can find picks from the pod by searching Payoff Pitch Podcast. Those three words, Payoff Pitch Podcast. In the Action Network app, that is where we'll log picks throughout the course of the season. Diving into the AL Central, Zerillo, talk about a team that overperformed from their expectations last year, right around this time, and then how they finished. The Cleveland Guardians. Their win total projection over at BetMGM, the number is set at 87.5. Last year, they won 92 games, a projection of 76.5. When you look at Cleveland, they're very young, as we know. Could they be a 100-win team if it all comes together? What are your thoughts on the Guardians?
They would have to really beat up on their division to get to 100 wins probably, but it's conceivable. They're very deep. They're going to be competitive in every game just because they have no holes on their 40-man roster. If anybody gets hurt, they can replace them with an average or above average player. So the only issue is that their top pitching prospect got hurt. That just lowers their ceiling slightly because aside from Jose Ramirez, kind of Shane Bieber, they don't really have a ton of all-star caliber players on this roster. They're more built to win in the regular season than they are in the playoffs. So maybe they can rack up wins. I don't like their win total. I would lean over. I have them at 88.5. The market's at 86.5. But I am roughly 2 wins over that listed win total. And I'm a win low on the Twins. And as you will see, very, very, very low on the White Sox, who are their primary contenders. So combining all of that together, I do like the Guardians to win their division more often than the odds suggest. I think they should be closer to about plus 120. I believe there's some plus 160s out there. I would bet that down to plus 150. I also think, obviously, that correlates to them getting to the playoffs at a higher percentage chance than they are likely implied. So their World Series odds, I think, are okay down to 33-1. Pennant odds down to plus 1750. Those should be small sprinkles, just like a tenth of a unit. Would certainly bet more like 3/4 of a unit on their divisional odds. But we will get to the Twins in a second because I think the Twins might be undervalued from a divisional perspective too, but I certainly believe that the Guardians are, and I know that they're built to win in the regular season. So I think it's interesting. They were projected third last year. Their win total jumped by 10 wins. My projection jumped by 11 wins. I think it's all legitimate. They're really deep in the bullpen, and I think they're built to win under these new rules. I mentioned it in my article, but I think it's a really cool stat and it's worth reiterating. They finished third last year in defensive runs saved, but they had the second lowest percentage of defensive runs saved generated via defensive shifts. They're very good defensively on an island at their individual positions. They were also third in base running value and top 3 in steals as well. So all of the new rules lead into the Guardians in addition to the regular season depth. I like this team to be steady throughout the season.
All right, so Zerillo starting off the AL Central preview with a bang, likes them to win the division, the pennant, and even sprinkle a bit on the World Series heading into the year. DeBundo, this is a young core that Terry Francona has. Can they have sustained success? Are you with Zerillo on this?
Not as much. I would have bet they're under, if not for what Sean just said at the end of his speech on the Guardians. Like, I think they ran incredibly well last year. I watched way too many Guardians comebacks, way too many against the Tigers, against the Twins, and against the White Sox. They beat up on the division last year. They were very good in division. The lineup does not play well when they're forced to face better teams. And I think they're going to, I know they're going to play fewer games against the AL Central, which, the back end of the division is really bad, as we've said. And they're going to play more games against the National League. And I think that's going to be much tougher for them this season because of how much stronger and deeper the National League is as a whole compared to the American League even. And so I'm kind of skeptical of this Cleveland resurgence. They have Josh Bell projected WRC plus of 120. After that, it's kind of just a bunch of guys who are just average hitters. There's not any power in this lineup. But yeah, they can play with the speed and the defense, and they can play up and I think play over some of their projections for sure. And so that's why I'm a little skeptical to bet against them from a win total perspective. But even the pitching staff, you mentioned it, with Espino getting hurt, it's a big loss. They only have one pitcher who's projected above average by Eno Sarris's pitching plus metrics. And that's actually not Shane Bieber, but Tristan McKenzie, who I happen to like. I used to dislike, and now I've decided I like him again. So Bieber overperformed his metrics by a ton. But again, that's what the Guardians pitchers have been doing because of the defense. I think they get bailed out. So I'm kind of in the middle on Cleveland. I have no bets either way on this team. I am targeting Minnesota for the division, which we're going to talk about in a second. I think Minnesota has way more upside than Cleveland. And I think if they're healthier, they're the better team in the division.
I should mention my player props on Cleveland as well, just because I think they're a good team from a player prop perspective. I don't like Jose Ramirez MVP this year because his odds dropped from 25 to about 15-1, but he's still 20-1 to win the RBI title. I'd rather bet that than his MVP odds. Shane Bieber, 25-1 wins leader. Ahmed Rosario, 25-1 hits leader. Surprisingly projects extremely well on a per plate appearance basis. And then, as Anthony just mentioned, Tristan McKenzie, I do think is a Cy Young candidate this year. 40-1, whether you like McKenzie or not. Those are pretty nice odds.
Yeah, he's above average in stuff and location numbers from last year. So, and he took a huge leap second half of the season, which is notable.
That'll be in my Cy Young breakdown, yes.
Minnesota Twins. We had just discussed that we would get to them. We will now. So Minnesota at BetMGM win total set at 84.5. Last year, they won 78 games. Their projection entering last year was at 82.5. And that's just we're using just a number, not a Pacoda or a Fangraphs. We're just using their win total projection if you look around books entering last year. Zerillo, this team, if I remember correctly, was giving you fits around the middle of last year. But are you realizing now, after the offseason and getting set for the season to begin now, that maybe you were just, and others involved at Action, other places, maybe you were just a year too early on the Minnesota Twins? Are you higher on them now, entering this year, having an off season to process what their season was like a year ago?
Yeah, I think the projection market is a bit sharper on them now. You combine the Fangraphs and the Pacoda divisional projections, and they would make their consensus line about plus 150. So compared to market numbers around plus 300, I think there's very arguably value on the Twins to win their division. Again, we bet them at plus 525 and plus 600 last year. Number much shorter now. Again, we'll go into the fact that I do not like the White Sox, but that is why I like both the Twins and the Guardians. The Guardians, I just do have their win total a couple of wins above their listed win total, where the Twins, I'm about a win lower. I certainly see the upside, as Anthony was alluding to, if everything stays healthy. I do not believe that Byron Buxton is capable of staying healthy for a full season, but I do like them improving their pitching with Pablo Lopez. Their bullpen melted down consistently at the worst possible moments last year. And I believe I said it under the Guardians breakdown, but just to reiterate, compared to their Pythagorean records, the Guardians overachieved by 4 wins and the Twins underachieved by 4 wins last year. Normally those things regress. You bring them both back to even. It's a coin flip division. I do think this is a 2-team race ultimately in the end between these 2 teams. I just like the Guardians' depth more to grind out a few more wins along the way.
Dubundo, any plays here on the Twins? I know you had some thoughts you wanted to get in on them.
It's like the shit, here we go again meme, and that's how I feel about the Twins. I was really in on the Twins last year, and I'm back again. I love their pitching staff even more than I did last year. I talked about Pablo Lopez. I think he's kind of just a guy in the middle of the rotation, but those are the kind of guys they need, and they have a ton of. There's no dominant pitcher in this rotation. Tyler Mahle, they traded for at the deadline. I was so excited. He got hurt like a week later. I think he made 1 start in Minnesota. Him getting out of Cincinnati, I think, is going to be huge for him. He projects well above average by pitching plus, as does Bailey Ober. Joe Ryan is above average. This is a rotation. Pablo Lopez right around average. I think this is a high floor rotation of pitchers who can all, if they can mostly stay healthy, they'll have a lot of depth. I mean, they were starting some awful pitchers last year, whether it was Chris Archer or Louis Varland that was getting starts. They had some really rough times in Minnesota with the starting rotation because of all the injuries that piled up for them. And then the lineup is the same thing. Jose Miranda was in and out of the lineup. Alex Kirilloff was in and out. I mean, Buxton is Buxton. We know this story. I'm betting Buxton 60-1 most home runs. If he puts together a full season, he has a 16% barrel rate last year. Elite, just hitting a ton of fly balls, just trying to barrel everything. Like he's no longer like a contact guy. Not that he was ever a contact guy, but he's, striking out more and going for more power. And it's worked for him in the last couple of years when he's been on the field on a, per game basis. Like Sean said, he's been one of the best power hitters in baseball. So if he can have 1 year, I think he's like the second or third favorite after Aaron Judge, right? Like who's better?
I have him 6th in home runs per plate appearance, but that list includes Tatis, who's going to miss 20 games, Trout, who always misses time, and Yordan, who has not picked up a bat yet. So do have him 6th in home runs per plate appearance, but ahead of Giancarlo Stanton, Pete Alonso. That shows you the type of power that you're getting from Byron Buxton.
So at 60-1, he's not going to play every game. He'll inevitably hit 20 in the first 2 months, and he'll be in first. And then it'll be Byron Buxton to miss 1 month because he broke his finger sliding into a base. He's had a lot of weird injuries too. It hasn't always been like hammies or muscle injuries. He's not running anymore, so that helps him not get hurt. Maybe he also will probably DH more. I think if you look at the way the lineup, he might DH more, so that could help him too. They're going to try to keep him healthy. They were load managing him. They were giving him like a day off a week. That doesn't help, but if it's going to keep him healthy for the long term, maybe it could help. But yeah, I'm in on the Twins to win the division. I think they have more upside. They could all get hurt again and they could flame out, which is why I don't want the win total, but I think they win the division because I'm low on Cleveland and I'm low on Chicago. So give me Minnesota to win the Central and Buxton home run leader 60-1. I bet it this morning. And now I'm just talking myself into the season.
It's going to end up being Gallo. You bet the wrong Twin.
Yeah, Gallo. That's another thing though. Like a lottery ticket on Joey Gallo,
yes.
who
they gave themselves
some homers.
Like not to pun, but like they gave themselves more outs. They give themselves more possibilities to, like you said, have a lottery ticket and just have guys pop. So upside is there, but depth certainly Cleveland.
Do we get a 2-team race? Guardians plus 140, Twins plus 200, or do we hitch our wagons again to the Chicago White Sox? They're at plus 240, which, based on the market, when you look at the Tigers and the Royals, that the White Sox should hang around and keep it interesting. BetMGM has their win total set at 82.5. Last year, they won 81 games, and their projection was 91.5. They've changed their manager. Well, we've known that now for a while. I'm looking forward to Zerillo's analysis on fading Lucas Giolito again, possibly often this year. But Zerillo, do we take the cheese on the White Sox? They've got a lot of talent, but they always seem to not live up to it.
Yeah, I mean, the upside is there for the White Sox as well, like it is with the Twins, if the roster stays healthy. They have high-end talent. Guys like Luis Robert, people were betting to win MVP last year. Everybody doesn't care about him anymore this year. The talent's still there. I like Robert for hits leader at 66-1. He ranks very highly in hits per plate appearance. That's a great lottery ticket. Robert at 66-1 hits leader. And then Lynn, I think, is going to have a good year too for them. He added a slider last year, started getting lefties out, which is the first time he's ever been able to do that in his career. You'll see him for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. I'm curious to see if he looks good. But yes, still low. And I like Dylan Cease, but still low on Giolito and lower on their depth because they do not have the pieces to replace anybody who gets injured. They're also an awful defensive team. They were 26th in defensive runs saved last year, and they were plus 12 because of the shift. They were also a bottom 10 base running team. So the new rules are going to rip them apart. If you put bad defense behind those pitchers, maybe their confidence implodes too. I mean, they already have bad defense. We saw what it did to Dallas Keuchel, though. Like they miss one double play, which he needs to get out of an inning because he's 40-year-old Dallas Keuchel, and just like everything falls apart. So that is an added impact that you can't really quantify, but bad defense can break your pitchers mentally as well. Across the projection market, though, beyond the analysis, across the projection market, everybody likes this under. The high projection is from Davenport at 80. I have the low projection at 76.7. All the other projections around 79 wins. So the market likes the under to about 82. I like the under down to about, or I should say, yeah, about 82. And I like the under to about 79.5 or 80. It's the best win total bet on the board compared to my projection, compared to consensus projections. I just think the downside, especially if you can bet, I know certain books let you bet where you'll get your bet each time for each win that team goes under. The White Sox would be the ideal team for me for that, because they could certainly win like 70 games this year and just completely implode and start trading pieces. So yeah, White Sox under this year for sure. My favorite bet.
Wow. Okay. Very good. Right now at 82.5 at BetMGM. DeBundo, any plays on the White Sox?
Yeah, they were in my column. It's funny. At the end of last season, once they fired La Russa, I was like, you know what? The White Sox have a good offseason. Great bounce back candidate for 2023. They did nothing. They got, their notable offseason signing was Andrew Benintendi. That's it. They added nobody else, and they lost Jose Abreu. And now Liam Hendricks, we wish him well in his recovery. He's not going to start the season pitching. So that's a huge loss to a bullpen that already wasn't that deep. Look at the lineup here, the back end of this lineup. Yohan Moncada, 5th projected. Andrew Vaughn. I like Vaughn. Yasmani Grandal, the ghost of Yasmani Grandal. Like, he's pretty much done. Gavin Sheets or Oscar Colas, neither of which have proven they can get on base consistently. Colas is a rookie. Sheets has some power, but not much upside, I don't think. Elvis Andrews, second base. It's really ugly, the back end of this lineup. And then you mentioned it with the injuries. Eloy and Robert are awesome. I'm a Luis Robert dynasty owner. I love him, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy either. So they also chased pitches more than any team in baseball last year, and then lost Jose Abreu, who was like the only patient guy. So you're going to see a lot of, swinging at bad pitches. I think that hurts their power, and their rotation. Michael Kopech and Lucas Giolito are huge question marks. There's no depth behind them. Mike Clevenger looked pretty cooked last year. He's the 5th guy. And then I think the 6th guy is Jimmy Lambert. I remember him making a couple starts last year. I don't remember them being particularly good. And they don't have a ton of high minor upside. So, yeah, I'm out on the White Sox. Unless you think Tony La Russa is worth like 15 wins. It's hard for me to get to the negative 15 wins. It's hard for me to bet the White Sox. So I like the under. I bet them to miss the playoffs. -130, I bet the under. And that was in my column, too, of just teams I'm selling. I don't like the White Sox approach. I don't like the roster construction, don't like the depth, and the high upside guys haven't been able to stay healthy either. So even if they do stay healthy, they're going to get fewer games to beat up on the division too, which, remember, when they won the division, they were like putting up joke numbers, like winning 18 out of 19 against the Royals and the White Sox and the Tigers. They're not going to be able to do that this year. So I'm out on the White Sox.
It's even money to take them to make the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I'm going to bet that. They also got a huge contribution from Johnny Cueto last year, signed him for absolutely nothing. They're not going to get stuff like, maybe you get something like that again. You can't factor that into a preseason projection. Their Pythagorean total last year was 78. They overachieved by 3 wins. So they should have gone under their win total by 13.5 games.
And I think it's notable that they will not get the Dallas Keuchel and Vince Velasquez starts. Like, whoever starts instead of them will probably be better, but it's also probably just going to be, like quad A starters when inevitably Giolito or Kopech has an injury issue, which both of them have had problems with and saw drops in their stuff last year.
I don't think you had much, Cirillo, on the Royals. We'll get to the Royals now, as well as the Tigers. Royals are projected at 69.5 wins, same as the Tigers at BetMGM. Last year, the Royals won only 65 games. Their win total projection was in the mid-70s. It's kind of similar to what the Tigers were, too. They had a projection in the high 70s, only won 66. But any angle on the Royals, if you had to lean a certain direction, if you had to play something?
No, I don't want to hate on the Royals either, because I feel like I have no opinion on them every year, but the market is just generally kind of in line with their win total. Pacoda has them at 63, so that would be an under from them. But if you average out all the projections, it recommends a pass. That's why I do the process that I do. I will say I think Brady Singer is the best starting pitcher on Team USA. So I hope if we have a big game in the World Baseball Classic, he's the guy we go to and not Adam Wainwright. But other than that, Royals fans, I unfortunately do not have any strong opinions for your team this year.
Colin Wilson's pissed.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Colin.
DeBundo? Royals?
I'm kind of interested in watching the Royals. Like, I think they're going to be fun. They have young players who are interesting, at least.
Vinny,
Of course,
Bobby Witter, delightful.
Vinny Pasquantino is I acquired him in Dynasty, so I'm excited about that. He's 100-1 for most homers. Charlie DeSturco and Parker Baru put me on that, and that's intriguing. The park's not great. The lineup's not great either, and so it's hard to make the case. I mean, I won't hate a flyer on it. It's a fun long shot lottery ticket for a really likable player who looks like he could be like Freddie Freeman-esque in his plate approach. So I'm in on Vinny. I'm in on, of course, Bobby Witt. MJ Melendez showed some real signs of like being a competent MLB player. Drew Waters in center field. I think he's hurt, but when he's back, like they got him from Atlanta for nothing. He'll be an interesting player. Like, they have some fun young players in hitting, and Brady Singer developed a little bit. So like, they're going to be a fun team to watch. I actually think there's like actually signs of building something for the first time in a while. But like, the pitching depth stinks. I mean, Jordan Lyles is in the projected rotation. Brad Keller is still there. Ryan Yarbrough may make some starts. Like, this rotation is bad. And I really just don't want the two dregs of this division, because they're not going to get to play the other mediocre division teams as much. All of these teams, for me, I'm hesitant to really buy in on, because they're going to have to play so many more games against the good National League teams.
I'm not a big trends guy, but the Royals were the second best over team last year, 82 and 74 behind the Mets. Their offense surprised me with how consistently good it was, and I don't like their pitching. So maybe that continues where they're a good over team. It's also kind of a sneaky hitter's park, if I do believe.
And the bullpen, once again, projects to be terrible. Aroldis Chapman is the big addition, but Scott Barlow, Dylan Coleman, Amir Garrett, like it's a rough. Carlos Hernandez, our former guy who can't throw strikes anymore. I mean, it looks like a really bad bullpen too. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun Royals games to watch this year.
He could never throw strikes. We were just hoping he could.
Right. That's true. It was like a minute where he was competent.
Looking at Zerillo's breakdown, the mega win total breakdown over on the Action Network website, as well as the free to download app. You can check this out. So your other favorite pick happens to be the Tigers, and their win total under at 70.5. Again, using current odds as we record, 69.5 right now at BetMGM. But a couple young pitchers are banged up. That's notable. They are better defensively. They do have some, or they ranked better defensively a year ago. But you're not hopeful that they don't have enough pitching, right? I guess is what your angle is here.
Yeah, the Tigers are a team who didn't shift for a while, and they finally tried to instill analytics, and now they're going to take shifting away from them. They were plus 25 in defensive runs saved last year. They moved from, I believe, like a bottom 5 defensive team to 13th. I think they're going to fall back down again this year. They're also bottom 10 base running teams. All the athleticism rules don't line up for them. Tarek Skubal was the AL Cy Young candidate last year. He's hurt. Casey Mize, number 1 on pick in the draft, I believe, top 2 or 3. He's probably going to miss the entire year. I'm not a Spencer Torkelson fan. I've always been a low projection person, prognosticator on Torkelson. I just don't like this Tigers roster in general. As Anthony mentioned, also fewer games against the division. So I think they're going to get beat up by the AL East and AL West teams when they have to cross over and play them. Pretty much all of the projections other than Zips like them to go under. The range, I'm at 66.8. The high is 70.3, but the other two at 66 and 64.6. So everybody recommends an under. I wouldn't really go below 70 here, maybe dip to 69.5, but I think this is going to be another tough year in Detroit. I know there's pieces there, but I don't like how they spent their money. The Javier Baez deal was an obvious overpay at the time and hasn't worked out. Riley Green's exciting. Eduardo Rodriguez maybe gives them something this year, but it's just going to replace what Tarek Skubal gave them last year when Rodriguez missed time. So it's hard to imagine the Tigers taking a significant step forward.
Bundo, take us home here on the Tigers.
There's not a team there's only one team in baseball that I'm less interested in than the Detroit Tigers this year. And it's a team we're going to talk about on the NL West show. I would rather watch almost every team in baseball besides them. And I agree with Sean. I'm not as low on Torkelson. I think he'll be okay. Like, I could see him, just kind of like being a good power first baseman who never really takes like superstardom. Riley Green is interesting too, I guess. But like the rest of this roster, like Jonathan Scope, Matt Vierling, Nick Maton, they traded for them from Philly. Like they're great dudes and could be everyday average players at best. Like I don't really think there's a ton of upside beyond that. And the pitching is just a mess. I mean, all of these pitching prospects they thought were going to be good. None of them are actually good. None of them look like they're taking that step forward. Like Skubal even did last year. But again, there's not a ton of upside and much for the same reasons that I'm down on pretty much the whole division except Minnesota. I'm down on the Tigers too. So yeah, this is a pure pass for me overall. But yeah, if when in doubt, betting on Detroit to be incompetent has been a good bet for the last half decade.
All right, gents, good stuff, folks. Again, all of our division previews are coming out this week. We're recording this one on a Monday, March 6th. So be on the lookout wherever you get your podcasts. Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast presented by BetMGM. Don't forget, again, during the season, we'll be having the podcast throughout the year. Search Payoff Pitch Podcast in the app. You can follow us throughout the season. For Debundo and Zerillo, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for listening.